Hi, world, ready to stand for truth and justice? Today, we're joined by a multi award winning journalist and filmmaker, Miss Daisy Gideon. Daisy, would you like to say hi to the world?
Hi, world. Thank you very much for having me in your rooms, bedrooms, lounge rooms today, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you in a short while. Let's start Inspiring Millions Show. Hello, world. Warmest welcome to World Humanitarian Drive's Inspiring Millions Show. This is the show where we celebrate brilliant minds from around the world who share with us their story. World Humanitarian Drive, also known as WHD, is an international NGO founded in Croydon, UK by British Indian global peace activist, entrepreneur, writer Dr. Abdul Basit Saeed. The primary vision of WHG is to promote peace, education, and trade harmony initiatives globally among everyone across the world, regardless of race, gender, religion, or nationality. Living as one family, WHD is striving for humanity. This Inspiring Millions show is your show. As always, we encourage you to engage and interact with us. Please help us spread inspiration to the world by sharing this link. Join our discussion by putting your comments, greetings, or questions that you would like to ask our guest. We would love to read them later on in the show. Tell us where you're watching this. Wherever you are in the world, let us keep you company and brighten your day as we share love, peace, and goodwill. Thank you for joining us live or in replay. Let's get inspired. Hi, world. You're watching the 98th episode of World Humanitarian Drive's Inspiring Millions show. I'm Vivandrada O'Flynn, your host and global media relations of World Humanitarian Drive. Happy February! It's known as the Love Month. It's also Inspiring Millions show's anniversary month. We're starting our second year celebration with a multi award winning journalist, filmmaker, entrepreneur, speaker, humanitarian, activist who bravely stands for truth and justice. Let's all welcome Miss Daisy Gideon. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. How are you, Miss Daisy?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to be speaking to your audience and especially being part of the World Humanitarian Drive and all of the mission that it stands for. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Miss Daisy. Could you please introduce yourself to the world and share a brief story about you?
Um, as you so succinctly outlined, I have many hats that I wear, but I'll try and be as brief as possible. Um, I'm 57. I have been working in the area of media and journalism for more than 3 decades. I grew up in Australia, despite being born in beautiful Lebanon, which is not so beautiful at the moment, sadly. But my family migrated to Lebanon when I was 5. So I grew up most of my life in Australia, and I'm very grateful to that country for all that it's taught me and all that it's given me and all the opportunities that a country with proper institutions and structures and values can show us. I know it's not perfect, but it's, living in Lebanon, it shows a difference. So I've worked in media. I worked as a journalist, as you mentioned, starting as a sports journalist and moving all the way across the other spectrum to becoming an international foreign affairs correspondent and working in global news and global politics. And just to bring you up to date, I've made 2 films, feature films, feature documentaries. I made many smaller productions, mostly in relation to humanity and peace and the Middle East. It's my area of expertise. It's an area of the world that needs a lot of attention. and we need to pay more focus to it, and that's why I'm doing that. And today we'll get into a lot more. Today I'm sitting in Beirut, and I have now relocated to Lebanon because it's where I can achieve a great deal more for humanity, and not only for Lebanon, but for humanity, because the situation in Lebanon, as I'm sure we'll discuss, calls for a great deal of support, awareness, education, and understanding. And that's what I feel my role is right now. There you go.
Thank you for that. Could we just know, how did you get your start as a journalist? How did you get into your career?
So I started straight out of high school. I realized in year 11 and 12, the last 2 years of school, that I was very passionate about writing, and my English teacher really encouraged me through the work that she saw that I did in English class. And I had always been writing when I was a child. It was my way of expressing myself was through words and poetry, and, you know, evolving that into something a bit more creative in the way of writing scripts, writing articles, writing stories, very, many forms of written expression. And so out of high school, I applied for a cadetship with one of the biggest media organizations in Australia, News Limited. It's a Rupert Murdoch empire. And fortunately, I was successful to be selected among 11 out of maybe 1,400 that applied for those 11 roles. And that really kicked off my career in journalism. I did my cadetship and had the opportunity to, to learn about various areas of reporting, and initially found my calling was sport, because I loved sport as a child. I was very sporty, and I found it easy to write about. So I began my career as a sports writer. I was the first female soccer writer in Australia, and I was the first female sports journalist on the Australian newspaper, the national newspaper. But it didn't take long. Maybe 4 or 5 years later, I made my first trip to Lebanon in my early to mid-20s. And it was on that occasion, that trip, during the civil war in Lebanon. So this is 88. And in spite of the civil war, that I discovered my roots, discovered who I was, what was missing inside me. I loved being Australian. I felt very Australian. But when I landed in Beirut and I, engaged with the people, and despite the war and the destruction that was just outside my window, it's much of it has been restored since then. I found my bigger calling, my true calling, which is where I'm back to today. And that is to understand what went wrong in Lebanon. Why was Lebanon in a civil war? Why was the Middle East in crisis? The Middle East has been in crisis for 100 years. It's a big topic. And that's what led me into changing from sports to foreign affairs, and continued me on my path to where we are today, making films, telling stories, bringing global awareness to Lebanon, and standing up for, as you mentioned, truth and justice.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. As a journalist, you cover from sports to foreign affairs, from Australia to the world. What makes a good journalist?
I was doing an interview just recently with a global network in the US, and it was about the art of interviewing. What makes a good journalist is going back to the fundamentals of why you became a journalist, what journalism really stands for. Journalism is an honorable career. It's an honorable profession. It's a profession that is supposed to communicate to the civil society, the public, what's going on, deliver to the people the facts, not tell them what they should think. And there's the difference in a good journalist versus, you know, a presenter or an opinionated person. Now, we have a lot of opinions written in journalism given on TV around the world. But when you talk about journalism, it's a very different responsibility. So the most important responsibility and role and key to being a good journalist is understanding what you're doing by interviewing the person or by writing an article. Your responsibility is to verify facts, deliver information, present it in a way that is understandable by the majority of society, not just to an elite audience or a specific audience, and allow them to make their own decision, allow them to come to their own conclusions. We shouldn't be telling people what to do, how to think. What we should do is deliver the information in a credible, factual, and professional manner. And that, for me, is the essence of true journalism.
Thank you. You have a real talk, real people, real story show. Could you please tell us more about that one?
Yes. So this is a new show that I launched in Lebanon in December. It came after having been based in Lebanon since April last year. So it was happening during that time. And I'd come across many people across the country, Lebanese and non-Lebanese, living in the country. And they had extraordinary stories of why they were here or why they were coming back or what happened to them. And they're not all negative, but they're real heartfelt, tremendous stories of humanity, tremendous stories of the spirit of the people that keep this country going. I'm sure your viewers will understand or know that the World Bank described Lebanon as the worst, having gone through and is going through the worst economic crisis of any country in more than 150 years. Economic is one crisis. Lebanon is going through a social crisis, a political crisis, a religious crisis. Fundamentally, every pillar of society is under stress in Lebanon. And I remember the American ambassador, Dorothy Shea, when she first came to Lebanon a couple of years ago, I think it was 2020, she said that she was coming with the knowledge that Lebanon was in a state of crisis, but she hadn't understood how many layers of crisis that Lebanon was enduring, and that it was a real catastrophe that Lebanon was enduring. Now, I sit comfortably in this apartment in Beirut, and I look like everything is fine. But that's the benefit of coming from Australia and having resources that I bring from Australia. It's not because I'm relying on Lebanon and, the situation or financially for anything in Lebanon, I couldn't survive. But, I still have to endure the hardships, the lack of electricity. Electricity in this apartment comes, probably 16 hours a day. The majority of Lebanon suffers from no electricity or to 1 hour of electricity a day. No water, hardly any jobs or any good paying jobs. So, this is the essence of what I witnessed and experienced, and allowed me to really connect with the people on the ground and the people who were coming to Lebanon. And I wanted to share those stories. I wanted to tell the world about those stories. I wanted to tell the stories of people who still have the courage and carry the resilience and spirit to stay in Lebanon, because so many people have left the country because it's falling apart. And that is the essence of Real Talk. Real stories, real people, real talk.
Could you tell us about your love for Lebanon and your deep ties to it?
Sure. Thank you for that question. As I mentioned, I really didn't have a love for Lebanon until I came back when I was in my early 23, I think I was. And I found these people. It was really the people that allowed me to love the country. But I'm also an advocate and a passionate historian. I love history. And Lebanon is an ancient country. It's been around for thousands of years. It's biblical. It's gone through the Roman Empire. It's had so many conquerors, Greek, Roman, the Crusaders. You have the Vikings, the Phoenicians first populated Lebanon in, probably 3000 BC. That really appealed to me. But coming back to the people, I found this heart, this sensitivity, this affection, this warmth, this love for each other. And they're people that really just want to be happy and want to spread joy and to give. And I found them so generous in everything, nothing was too hard for them. And it helped me connect with who I was. And I think this is what I was mentioning earlier, like, I love Australia. It's deeply part of me, but there was this unknown feeling inside of me that I couldn't explain until I came to Lebanon, and I found it in these people. I found who I was, that other part of me, and it helped me feel free. It helped me feel stable, like clear about who I was. And this began the romance and the love affair with Lebanon. And this made me, I said, why would such a country with such tremendous history, and I'd been through Europe, Greece and Rome, and the ruins of ancient times there. And I found that and more here. And I was, very confused as to why it wasn't better managed, and why Lebanon was not able to get its act together, basically, and why it was going through this war. And it's got a beautiful, location on the Mediterranean. It's got mountains and snow and greenery, and the environment is stunning. It is the most beautiful, tiny patch of earth in the entire Middle East. And I think it appealed to so many in the region and Europe and around the world during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when it was living its heyday, because it offered so much to everyone, and it was liberal. It was a liberal society. We're not talking about liberal as in extremely, crass or crude, but liberal as in you could be who you were. Everyone was accepted in Lebanon. Every culture, every religion, every gender, any industry. You had a liberalism that allowed people to come together as in a beautiful melting pot, a beautiful symphony of joy and diversity, that cultural, ethnic, religious, intellectual diversity. And this is what helped me love Lebanon and be fascinated, and why I wanted to fight for Lebanon, understand and fight in a way with my pen and with my films and with my stories to bring justice to Lebanon. Because I'm sure if someone mentioned Lebanon to you or to any of your viewers, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my God, war, bombings, terrorism, Hezbollah. This is the thing. It's not your immediate reaction would be to say, beautiful scenery, Mediterranean, swimming in the morning and skiing in the afternoon, outstanding cuisine, incredible Roman ruins, a a community of people who are just so embracing. You know, you don't think of that. And I think these are the virtues and the values of Lebanon that have been forgotten, and we need to remember them, because they're the things that are still holding the country together in spite of being in a state of catastrophe. So sorry, it was a bit of a long answer, but there's a lot to say.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy. We're really inspired with all the things that you're telling us. As a filmmaker, you aim to change the world one film at a time, and you're a multi-awarded filmmaker. Could you please tell us about your works?
So my first film came from this first, experience with Lebanon. So after coming here and starting to shift to work on Lebanon as a journalist, I also decided that if I really wanted my message to be received by millions of people around the globe and really enlighten them, then I needed to do it in a way that was accessible to the majority of people. And, unfortunately, we know that most people don't read anymore. Most people watch TV, go to the movies, and particularly today, it's all on YouTube. YouTube is the fastest growing channel and form of medium in the world. And, this is why so many people are, turning to YouTube and establishing themselves on YouTube. So I decided in the early 90s that I needed to make a film. And so my first film on Lebanon was called Lebanon Imprisoned Splendor. And it featured the late, great Omar Sharif. I'm not sure if, depending on the age of your audience, they may or may not know who he is. But, you watch the classics, Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago. This gentleman really put Middle Eastern actors on the map in Hollywood. He was the first real, Lebanese Egyptian or Egyptian Lebanese actor who brought sophistication and star quality from the Middle East to Hollywood. And I was very lucky to convince him to be part of that documentary. And the entire purpose of that film was what the title was, what stated was Imprisoned Splendor. The imprisonment coming from the perception of Lebanon, as I explained earlier, the perception around the globe in the 1980s and 1990s was all so negative. The women are all covered up. The country is a desert. There's terrorism, there's bombings, there's war, they're unsophisticated, there's nothing good that was reported on Lebanon. And for a whole generation, and even now a second generation, because there hasn't been enough in comparative media on Lebanon that changed the perception, the world thought of Lebanon in this way, including me. I grew up thinking Lebanon was all of that, and I didn't want to know anything about it, didn't want to connect until I came and saw the truth for myself. And that comes back to your first question about being a journalist. You need to tell the world the facts. And so I made that film, not to promote Lebanon as a holiday destination, not to make it a travelogue or anything like that, but really to tell a substantive story to the world that really addressed the misperception. And so I took people on a journey in that first film, which was extraordinary for me, won several international awards and qualified for the 1998 Academy Awards. And it won a Humanitarian Award from the United Nations organization. And so then, I continued my work, but mostly I moved into marketing and media. And I moved away a little bit for a while from filmmaking, although I told stories still and did different things. I moved away, I got married, I had children, I was in my 30s, and I really wanted to be a mother. I really wanted to have family. It was always one of my highest ideals, and I wanted to commit myself to that that profession, that passion, because it was all my life, it was something I dreamed of. So I took a break, and then later got back into work through my media company. And eventually in 2014, 15, 16, I started to think about Lebanon again, and realized it was time to come back and make another film on Lebanon, which is the new film that was released in 2021 at the Cannes Film Festival, Enough, Lebanon's Darkest Hour. And that film, yesterday we just received another award for it. We've received incredibly 26 or 27 awards now around the world from festivals all over the world. And that film, from the title, again, the title is very important. I learned this in journalism. It's like the headline. It's got to tell you really what it's about. Enough, Lebanon's Darkest Hour. And it was a journey making this film. I started in 2016 doing research and didn't finish until 2021. And that was because the story never finished. I thought I was coming to Lebanon in 2017 when we first came and started the first film shoot. I thought I was coming here to make a film about the Renaissance, the resurgence, the revival, the rebirth of Lebanon after the Civil War, which ended in 1990. But after 6 weeks of touring the country and traveling all over, speaking to people of all faiths, all socioeconomic levels, and all levels of education, because that, again, is important in journalism. You can't take a question or an answer or focus from one group of people. It has to be across the board. I realized I didn't know the story. I realized that the story was something completely different to what I had imagined. And the situation in Lebanon was very sad. It was very negative, and people were suffering. But they were still suffering in silence. They weren't prepared to speak out about those causing their hardships. So, I had to keep following the story. And every year something happened. And I planned to come back in 2018. I came back in 2018 for the 2018 parliamentary elections. And then when I was almost finishing the film in 2019, the revolution in Lebanon exploded on October 17, 2019, which was wonderful because that's when the people finally spoke out. And I was so excited. It meant I had to go back to the drawing board a little bit or reorganize my film, come back, film more footage. And then I was almost finished that story. I thought the story had ended there, when in August 2020, we had the Beirut port blast, which took us to a whole other level of suffering. And that was the moment when I said enough. And it became the title of the film, because we were still up until then trying to, negotiate, speak, kindly and in a way that was understanding of the powers that had caused Lebanon's demise. But that explosion, what happened to Beirut, what happened to the people, the neighborhoods that were completely destroyed. You had 230 odd people now, and nearly 240 people who've lost their lives from that result of that port explosion, and more than 300,000 people whose homes were destroyed, and more than 8,000 people who were injured. That's when I said, it's not good enough. We need to stop and end this and call it out as it is. And so the film was re-edited and repositioned very honestly, very factually, very fairly. I didn't identify or focus on any particular group or organization. I looked at all groups that were in power, that had the power to do something and help the Lebanese and help Lebanon. And this is one of the most important things that I get feedback on. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's also winning awards around the world, is because it's impartial. It's not biased, it's factual, and it's historical, and it's comprehensive. A lot of work went into that film. And, you know, today I sit very proudly, and I encourage whoever wants to know anything about Lebanon should start with my film, because it'll give you a very strong understanding of the situation, you know, on a very educational, impartial level. There you go.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. And we have a trailer of your film, Enough, and let's share it.
That'd be great. Thank you for doing that.
Dear Lebanon, your location and your diversity put you at the hub between continents and cultures. You have an impressive ability to absorb hardships. Yet you rarely confront the causes of them.
Who the hell is responsible?
I still can't get the images out of my head. The explosion took me reeling back to the days of civil war.
At the end of the war, the warlords were given promises of public money.
We have the same politicians, the same ones killed. They're still here, which is like, what?
You have so much vested interests in the system, which led us to this very tragic situation.
لماذا لم تبادر هيدي المواد المتفجرة؟
And why didn't the president do anything about it?
I don't know.
Corruption is eating up everything in the country.
We have to buy bottles of water, which costs more than petrol now.
The crazy floating power stations.
The system will not be changed from the top.
Elections are the only tool that we have.
I don't believe the voting process is legitimate.
So are you still confident with your decision?
100%.
If we do not fix ourselves, the people will revolt against us.
We Lebanese people, we're strong. We're very strong and we're stubborn.
What is your dream for Lebanon?
To become a nation.
We are Lebanese! All of us! Shame on you for dividing us! These politicians, they deserve to be in jail! Enough is enough!
Dear Lebanon, you're too important to let fail. We believe in the idea of Lebanon. The thing is, Lebanon, do you still believe in that idea? This is a question only you can answer.
Now that is a moving and powerful trailer, and we definitely want to watch that. So, Miss Daisy, what makes a good filmmaker?
You know, I think the most important thing when you're a filmmaker is to have empathy. Because if you can't tell a story that connects with your audience emotionally, you're not going to be able to move them. And films, all filmmakers really want to have an impact. And we make films because we want to tell a story. And we want to tell a story because we want to share something that might move you. But if you do it too clinically and academically and intellectually and too, you know, officially, formally, you lose the heart of a story. And people might intellectually be inspired or, you know, enlightened But films, and you see the greatest filmmakers in the world, the greatest films you've ever watched, they're the films that move you to want to take action or reassess your own beliefs, your own course of action, your own path, your attitudes, all this. And that comes from being empathetic. So I really believe that that is a starting point for every filmmaker. And then you've got all of the logistics and the operational and the practical experience and the knowledge that you need to actually make a film. It's a long slog. The detail orientation, it's the most important skill for any filmmaker. You have obviously the vision or an idea, but then to apply it, to actually put it into action, to see it come out on screen, you need to have the capacity to think in a detailed manner, because everything, every fraction of a frame that comes on screen, it's your responsibility to make it come out the way you want it to come out. So you have to have that ability to focus and think deeply and imagine it being, watched by audiences. How would they react? How do they hear it? How do they see it? What are they feeling? Is that what I want them to feel? Is that what I'm trying to tell them? Is that the message I'm trying to relay? Do these pieces work together? Does that affect the previous scene, impact the next scene? This attention to detail is critical. And of course, there are many other things, but really having the vision, having the passion, having empathy, and having attention to detail are probably the four most important criteria for a filmmaker. And then you need money, 5, to make the film.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy. Let's just say hi to our virtual audience that are watching right now. There's Win Wonderful. Apadu Rao Santaria is watching from Sydney. And Tongi Gra saying hello, watching from Manila, Philippines. There's Joanne Hernandez, E.M. Derequito, Guruji. Christine Manlapas is watching from Tagaytay in the Philippines. And Dr. Billy Tang is saying greetings from Malaysia. And Apadu Rao Santaria has this to say: please advise Miss Daisy email address. She's very inspiring, and he just wants to send you a message because,
Sure.
yes. And then, so I'm just going to post those later on. And then there's Tongi Gra, who's asking, very interesting and very captivating trailer. He wants to know, on which platforms is your movie available?
Okay, so at the moment, the film can be seen on Shahid Premium through the Middle East. It's the Arabic version. In Australia or the New Zealand ring, it's available on FanForce, FAN. We can share these links later. It's also available on Apple iTunes. And I have to check with my distributors because I've got 3 distributors and they're releasing it on different platforms. But it's not all on every platform at the moment because we're just going through an update of the film at the moment. I conducted some new interviews last year after the elections in Lebanon, and I wanted to update the film with a new ending because it's critical to the storyline, what happened in the elections last year. So we will be coming out later this year with more platforms that it's going to be released on, and we will be continuing a tour around the world that I stopped last year until we had this update. So, and my email, you'll be able to share that with them later on. And I'm very, very excited and keen to listen and get questions and comments and guide anyone who would like to connect with me. I think it's really important that the conversation spreads globally. And I'm very grateful to all of you all over the world from different cultures and backgrounds for being live with us today and listening to this story. And I hope it's making a difference to your lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy. We have more virtual audience sending their messages because they're really inspired. There's Marlon Hechanova saying hi, watching from the Philippines, NP Milio. And Dr. Billy Tang is saying, you're an inspiration, Miss Daisy. And he's so glad to have an encounter with you in person at the Trilateral Global Summit 2022.
I remember you, Billy. Thank you very much for watching. And I hope our paths reconnect very soon, truly.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. From being a journalist, filmmaker, you're also an entrepreneur of GDR Media Group. It's a multi-million-dollar marketing agency based in Sydney. Could you please tell us more about that?
Yes, sure. So this is the vehicle that's allowed me to pursue my dream. You know, my parents started the company in the 80s, and it was an operational logistics business, a distribution, marketing distribution agency. And then when I came along in 2000, when I was, I'd gotten married and was having kids, I started to help my parents, and slowly, found it interesting because I like to do things that are interesting, or I like to push myself, throw myself into things completely when I take something on. And I grew that business and I took it on a different trajectory. It still maintains its logistics arm, but we added the media and the marketing and the creative aspects to the business, because that was my purpose and my passion and my expertise. And so that company still exists today, and I have a tremendous team in Australia who run the company, with Diane Wang, Theo Wang, Ellie Khoury, Jeff Kavanagh. There's so many people who have allowed me to follow my purpose in life. It's not only just a dream, it's a purpose. I'm sorry for the tooting horns outside. But this media agency and organization, this company, allows me to do what I'm doing today. And it's grown, as you may know, from a very small concern of, less than 100,000 turnover to a multi-million-dollar business today, which I'm also astounded at how I did it, because I had no commercial brain whatsoever. Well, a little bit maybe, but I had to learn a lot. I had to go back and study and do courses, and I got coaches, I got mentors to help me run this business, because, I had there was a point in 2007, 2008 when I was going through this decision whether I would continue with that business or move straight back into filmmaking and journalism. And I made a call, and I decided that it was very important for me to remain independent. And I was very keen to get on with things. And I felt that, going back and getting a job or working in a media organization, a film production company, or trying to raise funds for a film would take a long time to get projects off the ground. And so I said, why don't I just keep going with this business, which has grown, and then appoint somebody to run the company, and it will allow me the time to work on my dreams. Because I could see that in the world, there were people like that, they didn't have to stay in their business, they weren't tied to their business. And that allowed me the possibility of seeing that vision, seeing myself coming out the other end with a company that could operate independently without me, while I pursued my calling. And that was really important to me, because business for me is critical, but it's not everything. And it's not the most important thing. It's critical to help you achieve an end. And my end is to serve humanity. My end is to help this world be a better place. My calling right now is focused on Lebanon because it's going through this tragic crisis. But what Lebanon's going through, in fact, it's happening all over the world, but at different degrees of intensity. And so through my film and through that company, I was able to make my film. And I'm so grateful to it. And I'm grateful to clients who stood by us and allowed us to, continue our work and deliver as professionally as we always have, because my team are incredibly professional, incredibly capable. But that decision was really quite intense, about knowing that I wouldn't be stuck running a business. It's not that I don't like running a business, but it's not my calling, And there are people who it's their calling to run a company. And we need people like that who can run a company, because otherwise companies won't operate. And that is a skill and a capability that is, that is really, it's very highly valued. So, that's the agency today still operates, and knock on wood, is still able to fund me and the work that I'm doing here in Lebanon for my people and for humanity. Yeah.
Thank you. What are your tips on starting and growing a business?
Very important. When I was doing the business courses that I did to go back and understand how to run a business, I learned that there's a statistic of the number of businesses that remain in business after 1 year of operation. And it's a tragic figure. In fact, it's anywhere between 60 to 70% of businesses won't make it past the first year of business. And we discovered, in doing the research on this, that it was because people are passionate and people believe in themselves, and they might be working in a company or an organization and they feel much more capable of doing more, or they don't like the way the company is running it because they've got a better way or a different way of doing something. And kudos to them. I'm sure they have, and they are. But the problem comes when they take themselves out of that company without proper research and planning into how to build a business, how to run a business. And a lot of people come into business without proper planning, without a vision, without a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year goal or plan. And they need a plan. They need to know how they're going to get there. And this is the most important tip I can give people. It didn't happen to me, but it happened during my oversight as the CEO of GDR Media Group. We went through so much planning. I jumped in head in the beginning, but, I had a base. It wasn't a company from zero. And we've been around now for more than 40 years. So we've got longevity and we understand what it takes to keep going. And it's such hard work. You are so responsible for everything. The buck stops with you, the owner. So you have to be ready for that. It's not for everybody. But if you have the determination, the temperament, the courage, because businesses are going to go up and down, and the wisdom to know that business isn't going to start making a profit in its first year or 2 years. It might take 3 years. That's where the planning works. That's where the costing comes into play. That's where the consideration of how many team I need at what time and when do they start, coming on board and what do they got to do. There's a lot of detail that goes into that. So my encouragement to anyone who wants to start a business, do it, but do it with your eyes wide open, not just from the state of passion, enthusiasm, excitement, and dream. They all need to be part of the, of the reason why you're doing it. But you can't let one thing have less priority than the other. And put it down in paper, make notes and flesh it out as a cash flow and a business plan, because then you'll see whether it's actually viable or not, and you won't, lose your house trying to build a business, and you won't destroy yourself. Your plan, it might be less than you thought, but it might be more than you thought. And only in seeing that documented will you be able to plan accordingly and adjust yourself accordingly. It might take you a year or two or longer, but you'll get there. That's my best advice.
Thank you so much. It's valuable advice, Miss Daisy. And then, so we found some pictures from social media, and then if it's okay if we share them.
Sure.
So here, could you let us know, what does it mean to stand for truth and justice?
Yeah. It all comes back to my roots as a journalist, delivering the truth in order to achieve justice. And I stand for that. And I want change. I want to change Lebanon. I want to change the world by using truth to awaken, enlighten, educate, inspire, empower, and mobilize people. And I want to do all of that so they can be a force for justice. Because unless you stand on strong pillars based on all of those factors that I mentioned, you won't be able to keep going in the fight for justice. And justice is not something that's handed to us. Justice, as I've been told by many people, including those in Lebanon, is never handed on a silver platter. Justice, you have to fight for it. And to this day, we're fighting for justice for the victims of August 4 blast, the port blast in Lebanon, the families of those victims. And there are people all over the world that speak up for justice. And there's a great saying that I always remember. It says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we shouldn't think that we're safe in our own little homes or our suburbs or our countries or whatever, because we've seen, particularly over the last 3 decades, how that can come home, and injustice that we see perpetrated against us through terrorist attacks in America, in Australia, in Europe, in Bali, all over the world. There are terrorist attacks. Terrorist attacks are an expression of frustration. They're an expression of anger. Anger because justice is not being delivered to people that deserve justice. Anger because people don't have time for talking anymore because they've spent enough time talking and begging and pleading. Justice has to be for everyone, or we will forever be impacted around the world by those who get angry, who get frustrated, who demand that they be heard. And the loudest way for them to be heard is through acts of violence. So I don't want acts of violence. I don't want to give these people an excuse. I don't want to give anyone a reason to act inhumanely, undemocratically, unpeacefully. We need to do things the right way. And so we have to learn through searching for the truth, standing up for truth, and mobilizing for justice, that we will make this world a better place, and we will turn the focus and the consciousness of humanity to a world where we would be proud of. You know, I don't think a lot of people are proud of the world the way it is today. Yeah.
Can you tell us about this one, Miss Daisy?
Yes, so this is Omar Sharif, who I spoke to you about before, about being the biggest Middle Eastern actor, Arab actor in Hollywood of all time. And he was featured in my documentary, Lebanon in Prison Splendor. And I encourage people to please jump on and purchase it. It's a, you know, small cup of coffee, you know, amount of money to watch my first documentary, because it'll really, you'll really enjoy it, and it'll really open your minds and your hearts, and your knowledge. It'll just give you, it's only an hour long, so it's not a long film, but you will come away far more knowledgeable and far more interesting, because you'll have something to talk about that is relevant globally, not just, you know, to people who are interested in Lebanon. So yeah, that's me and Omar Sharif in 1995, I think. Wonderful time. Here's another one. So I was at the Beirut Marathon in November 2022 that just passed. An extraordinary lady who should be on Inspiring Millions and be acknowledged. May El Khalil started the Beirut Marathon more than 2 decades ago. And she started it after being hit by a car. She was a runner. She loved jogging and running. And she got hit by a car and was, you know, basically told she'd never walk again. She had to be rebuilt. It was a tragic accident. I can't remember how many operations she had, but it was dozens. And this woman in her medical bed, only days after coming out of a coma, you know, told her husband, how are we going to turn this into something for Lebanon? There's a message that's bigger than me, than my accident. And she decided to create the Beirut Marathon. And so I'm very supportive and very grateful to call her a friend, but to support this organization and to encourage people globally, because you can run globally, virtually in this marathon. And there's a women's marathon coming up on March 19th. So I encourage people watching to look up Beirut Marathon, sponsor somebody, or do the Beirut Women's Marathon with those in Beirut, and support this really powerful and important cause. Thanks. This one, excuse me, about to sneeze. This post is from a lecture that I gave at one of the universities in Lebanon, the American University of Science and Technology in Zahle, the Zahle campus, which is in the Bekaa Valley. And I was very excited to be invited to speak to, you know, students and share with them the journey of the film, but more the journey of me and how I had been able to overcome so many obstacles and frustrations, and why it was important that I make this film, why it was important to reach out and keep talking about the message of this film, and that is to use democratic, humane, and peaceful ends to achieve change in Lebanon by voting in the elections, because It's the only vehicle we have to take control, and many countries around the world are democracies, and people will relate to that. We need to do it the right way. We need to do it peacefully. We need to do it honorably, you know, and this is what this film and so these opportunities, when I get to speak, I speak about very clearly about that. I'm going to just try and turn off my do not disturb my focus. Yeah, there we go. So we don't have notifications coming through. Yeah.
Can you please tell us about this, Miss Daisy?
Yeah. So this was the second anniversary of the revolution. Sorry, of the Beirut port blast. I'm just trying to make sure. No, sorry, it is of the October 17, 2019 revolution. The streets of Beirut in October 2019 probably had more than 1 million people demonstrating for change in Lebanon and saying enough. But unfortunately, because of the crisis and the helplessness of the people, less numbers are coming out on those anniversaries. But on this occasion, we went down to the streets, we interviewed the people, and me and my team, we're the ones wearing the T-shirts enough, wanted to be with the people to reaffirm our support for them and for change in Lebanon. And yeah, that's it. Enough is enough. Okay, so that was at the August 4 port explosion anniversary. And we had marched, that was last year, we had marched with the families of the victims of August 4. And we went from the port to the parliament to demonstrate for justice, speaking out for justice. We want justice, justice for those victims who lost their loved ones, and justice for all who lost their homes and, were injured. And yeah, that's me marching with them towards Parliament. One of my favorite and most important events of my entire life was being honored at the World Humanitarian Drive's Trade for Peace, Trilateral Global Peace Summit. I can't thank Dr. Abdul Basit, who is standing to the very left of the screen, for the founder, as mentioned earlier, of this organization. Nor can I thank Ian Turner, the gentleman, the English gentleman at the other side, the second from the end, in the yellow waistcoat. These men believed in me. They believed that I had a message that was important to be shared with the world. And, they are the ones that invited me to come and speak to the Trilateral Global Summit. And I got to meet amazing people like Billy Tran and many others, Dr. Anthony Carmona, the former Chief Justice, International Court of Justice, and the former President of Trinidad and Tobago, the gentleman right at the end on the left. It was an extraordinary event, extraordinary time, and I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity to be with you guys at that event.
Thank you so much.
And that was me speaking at the event. So exactly the same, following from the previous one. It's just the speech I made. And this one is, oops, we'll just jump back. Yeah. So I was named one of the 10 most influential women leaders of 2022 in September of 2022 by Industry Era Women Leaders. Great organization, I don't know how they found me, but I was very thrilled and very touched that they believed that my story and the work I was doing should be acknowledged in this way and recognized around the world. So very grateful. That's the inside story from that homepage. The 100 Successful Women in Business was an amazing event. I was again delighted to be nominated and successful as named one of the 100 Successful Women in Business. But you know, the best thing, this is me accepting my award on the night of the ceremony and feeling very content with what was going on. You know, being amongst that group of elite women who are extraordinary in their own right, all working for a cause, for a purpose, not for the dollar, really allowed me to connect with a tribe that I was always looking for. And they are my tribe. And we work and support one another. And I'm very grateful to have been a winner in that competition. And this was we had won several awards at the Wisdom Tree International Film Festival in India. As you can see, there were 5 awards there. The film had taken out Best Director, Best Trailer, Best Sound Design, Best Documentary. I can't read the other one. But this was really just an announcement of the awards that we'd won, the accolades that we'd picked up during that period. Yeah. So this is me doing a news report in Beirut with the port behind me so that you can see the silos that are the last things remaining out of the entire port, and they're very unstable. After that interview, by a couple of months, some of the silos at the very right of their screen collapsed. There was a fire in the silos, and the government refused to put it out. They said let it burn out because the silos still contained a lot of wheat, and so they could burn. And you know, unfortunately, during making that report and what has come back out since then is that they potentially have intentionally left the fire to burn to weaken the structure, even though, you know, it's a historic and symbolic monument to their passing, and the families of the victims don't want it to be erased, the silos. They want it to be there to remember their loved ones. Yeah. That was a beautiful award that I'd won by the Civic Influence Hub. They awarded me with my first award in Lebanon for Lebanon, the film, everything I'm doing for this cause, which they so clearly believe in, was something that deserved recognition, and I thank them all for recognizing me. Okay, and this is the launch event in Beirut on April 9th, 2022, when we launched the film. That's the media wall. And yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that lovely photo and reminder.
And could you tell us about Dream Creations International?
Yes, the Dream Creations International is the vehicle the organization that is the mother media company. It's the mother that it's a film production house. It made the 2 films, and it's also a media platform established in Lebanon. Established in Australia, but we're just establishing a Lebanon branch for it too. But it really is the vehicle and the power behind helping us achieve our objectives through visual medium.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. You're a humanitarian and activist. You're a board member of World Humanitarian Drive, Trade for Peace, and member of other groups. What is the importance of making a difference and paying it forward?
Sorry. It's everything to me. It's what I live for. It's, if we can't lift people with us on the journey, if we don't understand the importance of lifting up others with us, if we don't understand the importance of leading for truth, for humanity, then our existence in this life is going to have very limited meaning. It's going to have a materialistic meaning more than a spiritual meaning. And we are spiritual beings. We were brought to this earth to make a difference. We weren't born to lie on lounge chairs and drink wine and eat rich foods and not do anything else. We are absolutely entitled to eat our caviar and drink our vodka or whatever we want to do. But there's going to be a time, place, and relevance to it all. So working as a humanitarian and an activist really connects me back to why I started all of this and what my calling is. And, activism doesn't have to be negative or violent. Activism can be peaceful. It can be through various other means. And we need to learn many more platforms and find more people to join our international global family who all want a decent, humble home to go back to. They're not asking for mansions, but we have to have the will. And that's why people like me, organizations like you, are very critical in helping people understand their role for the long term.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. What is going on in the world through a multi-award-winning journalist and filmmaker's eyes?
Wow. Where do I start? There's so much going on in the world. Most prominently is the Ukraine-Russia war, which has affected everyone, everywhere in the world. And this is why injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere is really relevant. There's a threat of violence, and there is an actual attacks being undertaken in Europe, on the Ukrainian people and in Ukraine. And a lot of people are speaking the right things, saying the right things, but what are they actually doing? And we are a global community against one nation. Why can't we come together and make a global decision what our statement's going to be? We have got the foresight to be able to hold these people accountable, because they want to be in the big boys clubs. They want to be at the UN. They want to be at the World Humanitarian Drive. They want to be in these other organizations. So we need to learn how to better manipulate them to achieving our objective as humanitarians.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. How could our virtual audience get in touch with you and help the causes that you believe in?
Like we mentioned, they can either email me, which would be great, direct message me on Instagram, or, you know, on other platforms. I recommend messaging so I can tell the difference. I think they're the best and easiest ways to reach out to me, and tell me what you can do, what you want to do, what is your passion, and let's see if it aligns. Because this movement that I'm creating, this, you know, we didn't talk about my foundation, the Fair and Free Lebanon Foundation, which, you know, was featured at the World Humanitarian Drive. And its goal is to lift the ground by providing micro enterprises with, you know, a grant to be able to start people to establish their own micro enterprise through the grants that we offer them, which we will be launching the foundation in about April this year. So there's a lot to be considered. But, you know, at the end of the day, I hope that everyone who reaches out to me are people who believe in their mission, their purpose, and want to connect with that, because it's the only way that you'll actually want to work for me or want to help me or want to be involved, because you too believe in your calling. And if it resonated with you, it means that it's meant for you. So we hope so. We need an army. We need an army to do what we need to do in Lebanon and for Lebanon.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy. And here's a question that we always ask our guests, and that question is, what is your inspiring message to the world?
My inspiring message to the world is this. If you were lying on your deathbed today, looking back at your life, looking back at what you achieved and what you didn't follow through on, would you be satisfied? Would you be able to die peacefully and contently? And if not, what is it that you know you should be doing? Because that's a thing that's going to really spark up really quickly when you ask yourself that question. I want to inspire you not to waste this life, not to waste it just on having a great time. You can have a great time, but make it mean something. Make a difference with your life and get in touch with the thing that moves you in here and reignite your passion, the passion that was seeded in you when you were born, when you were conceived, that you came to this earth with. Reignite it. And please stand for truth and stand for justice, and let us change the world based on these two fundamental ethical pillars, because that's all we need to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy Gideon, for inspiring the world with your story, for sharing your words of wisdom. And we would like to award you with an Inspiring Humanitarian Award. Congratulations. Would you like to say something, Miss Daisy?
I'm blown away. I'm moved and touched by the World Humanitarian Drive and its continued support of me in what I'm doing for my country, for Lebanon, and for my people, and seeing it that it is actually for all humanity. I want to truly thank Dr. Abdul Basit for his love, friendship, and belief. And I hope that we can join hands more regularly, because I know we're trying, Dr. Abdul Basit, to make the World Humanitarian Drive more powerful, more recognized, and more influential in the world, because our world needs the WHD. It needs activists and people like me and Dr. Abdul Basit and many others to shift it. And so again, I say thank you. I'm honored and deeply touched, and I can't wait to thank you very much in person, Dr. Abdul Basit and the World Humanitarian Drive and all of the people that make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Daisy. And we would like to share an inspirational quotation by our guest. Would you like to read it for us, Miss Daisy?
People place too much hope in hope and not enough in action.
Thank you so much, Miss Daisy.
Thank you for sharing that and allowing me to share that quote. It really means a lot to me.
Yes, could you tell us more about that quote? What do people need about
thank you.
being action?
You know, you hear this, and I'm in Arabic-speaking countries and around the world, everywhere, people saying, God willing, inshallah, 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 inshallah. You know, it's all about the hope, and we need hope, but reality is, you know, God is waiting for us to get up and do something. God is ever present all around us, but God has given us the power, the legs, the intelligence, the energy, the spirit, the means, the technology to make change possible and do what we want, do what we need to do, but we have to do it through action. And action requires shift, getting up, stepping up, speaking up, standing up, moving, taking action. And that's what I mean by this. We can't just stay, oh yeah, inshallah, waiting for God to do this for us. It's not possible. God requires us as his children to want this, to want it so badly that we will take action for it. Why, if we want it, if we think it's so important, why wouldn't we take action? That's my point.
Miss Daisy Gideon, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all your humanitarian works, and here's to many more. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring story with the world. We're grateful. We really appreciate it, and we celebrate your achievements. Miss Daisy Gideon, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Viva. It's been a fascinating interview. I truly appreciate your research, your knowledge, and your desire to have me with you as a guest today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all that you do, Miss Daisy Gideon. We hope you all enjoyed today's discussion, that it motivated you to fight for your right and freedom, stand up for truth and justice. WHD would like to greet all those celebrating their birthdays, including my mom, Winnie, who is loving, inspiring, supportive, and watches every episode of Inspiring Million Show. Happy birthday. Many more wonderful years ahead, and we love you. And we would also like to greet those celebrating your special milestones this week. Happy 7th wedding anniversary to my husband, John. Happy Las Vegas wedding anniversary to Happy and Tongi Gra. And have a lovely weekend, everyone. I'm Viva Andrada O'Flynn. Please join us again next week. We'll have an interesting discussion with Jasara Nazari and George Murray as we inspire the world here on Inspiring Million Show. And here's the video. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching.